Welcome to another edition of Enta Asks. Today we have James Burrows from Sarah Consulting. James has 25 years of experience working in a diverse group of industries, largely in the areas of sales and marketing development.
Today we're going to ask James thoughts on sales and marketing post-COVID. But before we get into that, James, I want to know about the name of your company, Sarah. I'm saying that right?
You are, absolutely. And thanks, Caitlin and Adam. Thanks really for the work that you're doing with the Enta network and these Enta Asks. The time is great for this, and it really provides an opportunity for, different thought-provoking things as we enter into a new normal. So, what does Sincera mean?
Yes.
I get that a lot, and what it does mean is that it's proverbially without wax. And where does that word go to? It comes to the word that we're most commonly familiar with, sincerely. It derives from the Roman stoneworkers who would cut corners and hide mistakes by applying shiny wax to marble rather than taking the time to do the work properly. It became widespread, and honest stoneworkers would kind of say that their work is sincera, or without wax. So it eventually became to mean honest or trustworthy. And that's why I picked it out as part of my personal moniker. As a consultant, I'm not necessarily going to tell you what you want to hear, but I'll be honest and straightforward. Generally speaking, I try to identify sales and marketing gaps for my clients, what's missing, and identifying the fixes. Then I'll kind of work with teams towards successful implementation. And, great ideas are one thing. Execution, though, it's absolutely everything.
Excellent. Yeah, totally. I really like that. Candor and transparency are so key in today's business world. So that's a really great, history of where your name comes from. Yeah. So James, let's jump right in here and let's talk about your thoughts on sales and marketing given the post-COVID new normal.
Well, that's a great question. And what is the new normal? Right? Predicting the future is pretty much a fool's game, so we don't really know a whole lot about it. This is kind of like right out of the park. But, we can draw some conclusions from history. And, if we take a look at what took place in 3 recessions prior to 2008, the big subprime mortgage scam or whatever the case may be, there's some significant things that we can learn. And as the chart illustrates, 17% of companies didn't survive a major recession.
Wow.
Yeah, it kind of blows you away. 80% at that time hadn't, regained their pre-recession growth rates, and even after 3 years. So only 9% flourished. It's that 9% factor, kind of like a Pareto principle sort of thing. And I'll be talking about that later on in another Monday strategy thought. But, it's a really, really tough space. And to suggest that we're not going to go through that post-COVID-19 is kind of, foolhardy. What it is for sales and marketing companies, it's all about quick revenue gain. And that's what impacts sales and marketing plans. The good news for top performing sales and marketing organizations is that if their customer/targets are going to be open to change, the status quo does no longer apply. So, as a sales and marketing organization, you always had those people with a high need for safety, or the status quo is good. That's not going to take place anymore. And those gatekeepers and people with a high need for safety that fail to bring good ideas to the table, to the executive or to the decision makers, they're probably going to be a big part of the head reduction. So this is a great time for sales and marketing to reposition their offerings and open up different doors in their target accounts. Remember, who you're selling to, they have their own challenges for quick revenue gain. I mean, every organization has a sales component to it, and they're going to employ the best tactics that they possibly can.
That's really interesting, James. So when we look back at the 9% that thrived, historically speaking, during recession, are there some repeatable or recognizable behaviors or things that they really took to heart that we can try and adopt going forward?
Well, you're right. It comes down to strategy and tactics. There's lots, but if you just focus on 4 of these, just 4, you can really move the dial. These things are critical. I think number 1, you have to have what I would call a startup mentality. So very seriously, you have to take a look at your existing business model canvas. And if you don't have one, it's time to kind of like make one and review it. And then additionally, you kind of like have to take a look at, lean canvases, like what it would be like to be a startup, or think outside the box and say, here we are, how can we delight customers? So I think you're going to see smaller teams and more focused emphasis on customer-centric activities that add value. Here I am sitting with 2 engineers that know all about everything when it comes to kind of like engineering and development. So let's talk specifically about software development. Agile and Scrum have been kind of like state of the art over the last several years. So, the emphasis of Agile and Scrum teams is to kind of like identify what is most important and relevant to the customer and deliver those things as soon as we possibly can to add customer value. And so, at the end of the day, I think that sales and marketing teams are going to take a leadership role, incorporating what I would call sales, Agile, Scrum kind of environments to their sales and marketing environments. So, I really think that that's going to be a significant aspect to kind of like increase the speed. Again, we're all about quick revenue response here. Increase the speed to getting and delighting customers. I could go on about that. It's pretty in depth. But you guys who are engineers kind of like understand how that can be incorporated into the sales and marketing portfolio.
Yeah, James, it just makes me think. Some of the large organizations I've worked both for and with, marketing, whether it be digital or otherwise, is often viewed as sort of a separate department completely, right? Then from operations. But if you're adopting a startup mindset, then that really becomes much more integrated.
Absolutely, and like, what is the new normal, Adam? We don't know what that is. We know that this is significant. It's probably worse than 2008. It's definitely worse than 9/11. I mean, it took 3 years for airplay or air travel to normalize and get back to normal, what we consider normal. But I don't think there's new normals anymore. I think you have to create those new normals. And as Agile Scrum has been fairly effective in terms of delighting customers, providing that they deliver. At the end of the day, if that can be incorporated in sales and marketing, that can kind of like put some speed into play and kind of like move the dial much quicker than your competitors. I think, another thing is realigning the sales and marketing spend. A lot of companies don't really focus all that well on MROI in terms of marketing return on investment. It's not really a measured thing, but it's going to be a much more measured thing going forward. And if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. People would throw proverbial dollars towards marketing and sales, and have a wishful thinking. You can see it even now today in major retailers or grocery retailers. So we're talking the B2C side, where in the simplest sense, no flyers, or they're dispensing the spend on flyers, and they're putting all that spend towards digital marketing, knowing their customers, having a connection with their customers so they can reach their customers more effectively. In fact, like 40% of the customers that were surveyed companies recognized that there was really no in-paper ads or store ads or whatever the case may be, but there was a significant impact on digital marketing. And here, even in Canada, we can see Galen Weston, who has taken over his father's George Weston Group, which is a bunch of grocery stores. We can see throughout this COVID-19 his connection with customers, and it's gaining traction, significant traction.
So he's building the trust there.
No trust, no need, no help, no hurry. We tend to complicate things, but it really comes down to that. And particularly given this pandemic, the no trust thing is, it's always been significant, but it's crucially significant now. I think probably, the last thing that I would say, Caitlin, is that build cash access. Banks aren't going out of business. Private equity companies aren't going out of business. Venture equity companies aren't going out of business. They're looking for the next best thing. They really are. And the companies that stay ahead of the curve focus on, quick revenue growth and put things into place where they're closer to their customers and they're looking for new business opportunities. Those are the companies, Caitlin and Adam, that bankers, private equity companies, venture equity companies are going to actually reach out to. They're going to go and say, yeah, we're in a new time, a new norm. How can we finance your growth? Not just organically, but through acquisition.
So those are really 4 really great points. And just to recap for everybody, the first one was the quick revenue gain. Existing business model, maybe a lean startup canvas. We've got the agile kind of scrum mentality where we're giving power to the people to be able to really influence the customer results. We're looking at a comprehensive marketing return on investment. And then finally, that cash access. But I just want to come back to that return on investment piece, because we have heard this so many times in the digital marketing world, and we talked about building trust, and it's so hard to measure that. If you've spent all this time and money building that trust and doing these things where you're not asking for immediate purchase, how do you measure the return on investment? And do you have any suggestions around that particular piece?
Well, I can address that, but I just want to say you've nailed it. Those are 4 confluent strategies that are really capable of moving the dial. But on the MROI, a lot of companies throw tons of money at clicks and all sorts of kind of, what they consider KPIs that don't really turn into transactions or thought leadership or moving the dial to get people to migrate to a purchase. So if you're in a B2C world, you want quick actualization, you want quick results. And for all intents and purposes, that's what you should be focused on. But it's a learning process. It's an educating process. And if you're into the B2B world, it's much more involved. I mean, there's not a single stakeholder decision maker going and saying, like there was in the 70s or 80s, saying, yes, I like it and I can sign for it right now.
Right.
No, it's much more complicated, much more complex. So your MROI has to kind of like take a look at your marketing spend and really identify what moves the dial. Clicks mean nothing. Action is everything.
Right.
That's really interesting. I think, only time will tell, but it'll be really interesting as we recover from all these COVID reimbursements, et cetera, to a model that, like you said, encourages businesses. So James, just to wrap it up, do you have any final thoughts or messages that you'd like to leave with the audience?
Well, I mean, I want to thank you guys. What you guys do is significantly impressive. I mean, you're both consultants in your own space, but the leadership role you've taken over the last several months, to kind of develop a potpourri of consultants to get the best ideas, and predominantly to, be focused on what post-COVID-19 world looks like for Canada. And again, this is not a stroke. You guys have really been putting in a lot of man hours and time for this, so hats off to you. I'm focused on companies that, if they're missing a step, we're all missing a step, to be quite honest. I provide a lens as to what's missing. And, from my Sincera moniker or perspective, I don't provide any wax. Like, I may tell you things that you may not like to hear, and odds are that I'm very likely to do that. So, I'm not a highly political person. But, if I can't help you, I can pretty much guarantee that I can point you in the right direction with somebody that can help your organization to be successful post-COVID-19 and to get quick revenue growth. So there you have it.
That's great. Well,
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time, James. Really appreciate it.